So in the beginning of the year, we set a theme of building a community, partly because we were in the process of physically building this community, and partly because we were rebuilding after the long away that we had from everything as a community during the pandemic. And so we've done a pretty darn good job of rebuilding the community and bringing it back to, what it was before all of the turmoil and things that happened. So we chose this theme, building a community, for our 2023. And then we chose a different theme for each month. And so for the month of December, we went with the theme wisdom. And so today's talk is Sacred Pathways to Spiritual Wisdom. I chose this title probably mostly because of our founder, Ernest Holmes. For he was a man that was able to take lots and lots of different spiritual practices and philosophies and principles, synthesize it all into this amazing philosophy that we have here called Science of Mind. And so today I'm going to talk about some of those different spiritual paths and a little bit about how Ernest worked to get himself to that. One of the things that I do often is find different books on the topics and read through those. And so I came across this book. It was written in 2020 called Sacred Pathways. And it's written by Gary Thomas. And in there, it's really from a Christian point of view, but there are so many different ways of finding God that he uses in here that I thought it was really kind of spoke to what I wanted to talk about today, because I think for most of us in a room like this, you have had different ways that you have come to this spiritual realization. Sometimes it started off in a very traditional form. Maybe you were going to Sunday school with your parents or church on Sundays. Many of you started in some of the traditional Christian or Jewish or Islamic or Buddhist or any of the other major faith traditions that we have in our world today. And it worked for you for a while, and then you needed something else. And so you found a different way to practice, and you found a different way of being that spoke to you a little bit more, and that worked for a while. And sometimes we even step away from it. I know for me, in my early 40s, I got to the point where I thought, well, this isn't working for me. This must not be true. This whole thing of God, this can't be right. I'm not sure there's even one out there. I'll just go along with it. And then, God hits you with a 2x4 and then laughs. But that's the way it is. So anyway, so Gary Thomas talks about 9 different ways of having a spiritual connection, spiritual pathways that he calls them. And so the naturalists, those are the people that find spiritual connection out in nature. Is that anybody out here? Yeah, I thought that is one of my favorite ways, is to be in a place that inspires awe in me, because it is unbelievably beautifully created. And it had to be created by something with a spark of divine inspiration that brought all of that beauty into existence. I think about walking through the redwoods in Northern California and looking up at those trees that are so tall that you just barely see a little light glimmering through the canopy of the leaves up there, because it's so dense with trees, and it's otherworldly as you walk through those forests. One of my favorite places in the entire world is the beach of Asilomar in the Monterey area of California. That's where my ashes are going, just so anybody wants to know that. People that need to know, but anyway, I am absolutely blown away when I just park my car alongside the road and get out and listen to the waves hitting those rocks and feel the moisture in the air and the coolness, and watch the plethora of animal life that is visible right there in this little oasis in the world. I am awed when I'm in our national parks. Zion's one of my favorite, Bryce, Grand Canyon. These places just absolutely inspire a divine connection within me. I am absolutely blown away by the magnificence of nature and the way it shows up. The second form is Gary Thomas calls sensates. These are people who feel the divine connection through their senses, or they also sense the divine connection through their experiences. And so it's the people that can be standing outside and a wind blows by and you feel that breeze touching you and you realize that breeze touches the next person and the next person and it came from somewhere and it's just connecting all of us together on the gossamer threads of that breeze. The ones who hear something, we hear the incredible music that takes us to another place in our world and it takes us deeper than we ever thought possible. So those kind of senses, those kind of feelings, those experiences of the divine are a way to connect to it. We have the traditionalists. The traditionalists use rituals, symbols, books, text, practices that have been handed down through generations, things that are reminiscent of their past, and they spark something in us that allows us to connect in a deeper way. I happen to be a big fan of rituals. I think a ritual can take me out of my everyday experience right into the sacred in no time at all. So we're going to do lots of rituals here because I love them. Sometimes you see a symbol. I have a spiritual practice of drawing a sacred mandala every morning. It's a circular design, geometrically shaped circular design. If you haven't seen one before, just ask me. I've got a whole list of them on my camera, on my phone, so all kinds of pictures. But it sparks a sacred image within me, and so then I go into contemplation and I allow it to come forth, and so it becomes a symbol of that experience. And oftentimes I'll write on the back of it, the one that I drew that morning, I'll write on the back of it something that has occurred to me or something that I was thinking and processing at that time. We have the aesthetics. This is not me. I don't practice simplicity a whole lot, but I do like solitude. I would never consider myself an aesthetic person. An aesthetic person is generally someone who gives up lots of things in their lives. You might think of St. Francis of Assisi. He was one of the great aesthetics. He was so adamant about not ever killing anything that he would only eat something that he found on the ground. It had to have died, fallen off the plant and died before he would ever eat it. And of course, he never ate animals of any sort. He died a very early man, by the way. I'm not really sure how good that was, but anyway, it worked for him. It really worked for him to be in that place of giving up so much to where we just actually embrace that spiritual connection. It's like the other stuff kind of is set aside and we don't have to worry about it. Buddha was one of the best aesthetics. I once read that he ate so little. His goal was to eat so little that he could see his backbone from the front of his body. Now, I'm not really sure he got that far, but that was his goal. And he was with a group of people who practiced that. They ate so little food that they became so pure in their bodies that it gave them a place to get divine insight and so forth. And he's done pretty well in the world. We have the activist. The activists are people who find spiritual connection by being of service to some kind of a cause or some group of people in the world. They are the ones who are actively out there making the world a better place for other people. I think all of us have a little bit of activism inside of us, and we use it to certain degrees. Sometimes when we are attached to an issue of social justice, we will work towards that. And I think that's probably a little bit better than trying to solve all of the world's issues all the time. We find those ones that are really impactful to us and really important to us and begin to do that as a devotional practice. And through that, we wind up connecting to people in ways that we might not have ever connected before. And, we see the presence of the divine in these people that we are connecting with. And when we're in service and when we're giving of ourselves, people see the presence of the divine in us more readily, too. Along with that, we have the caregivers. These are the people who are taking care of other people in their lives. And they find that to be a great devotional practice. If I can give of myself somewhere else, it gets me out of my issues. Gets me out of what's happening in my world right now. When I first came to our center over on Harmon, I came there as working in the bookstore. And I quickly found that if I was bugged about something in my life, I could go to the bookstore and sit down on the computer and do a bunch of data entry, which is what I was doing there, and I was at peace. I started to call the bookstore my sanctuary because I was giving of myself there. It was a place where I could be of service to others in a way that was unique for me. Not everybody had that skill or that a desire to sit at a computer for hours and hours and entering data. But it worked for me, and it gave me a place to connect. And it gave me a place to discover lots of different spiritual paths in itself. Lots of interesting things in the world. We have the enthusiast. Those are people who connect with the Creator through mystery and celebration. They get really jazzed up. I think of the revivals, the Christian revivals that we've seen in the revival tent, where that is like, palpable. The energy and the passion and the enthusiasm that's going on in there is absolutely, you walk into it and you can't help but feel that and have it light you up as well. And so having that enthusiasm for spiritual principles and practices can really lead you to a different place. We have the contemplatives. If you have come into this center, you are probably a contemplative of some sort, because we do contemplative practices here. We had our meditation at 9:30, led by Debbie Little. It was a beautiful experience. It's a time to sit and contemplate, to be in meditation, and to just see what happens. We have many of our classes that deal with the contemplatives, like Joel Goldsmith, where we read his work and we contemplate it, and we see how it comes alive in us as we read through that. And then we have the intellectuals. I can guarantee that you two are also an intellectual here, because if this philosophy has appealed to you in any way, you are an intellectual, because it's a very intellectual philosophy. It takes things and it brings them into a logical and reasonable explanation of how it works. Ernest Holmes was a master at that, at taking these ideas and synthesizing them into this comprehensive message that he has brought forth into the world. So Ernest Holmes hasn't been around in my lifetime. Well, he was he died before I was born. I was born 2 months after he died, so no, he wasn't in my lifetime. But what an impact this man has made in my life. He founded the Institute of Religious Science back in 1926 as a school of philosophy. And then in 1927, he wrote a little book. It's not as bad as you think. It also has a concordance in this copy, so that much of it's concordance. He wrote it in 1927, and then in 1938 he revised it because he believed that some of the things that he had put in the original version, actually he couldn't prove. And he was all about proving this stuff. And if he couldn't prove it, he wasn't going to write about it. And so he took some of the stuff out of there, things about psychic phenomena and things like that he couldn't actually prove, so he wasn't going to keep it in his book. And so what we use here today is the 1938 version of The Science of Mind. Now, Ernest Holmes was self-taught. He was a philosopher who rigorously studied all of the different faith traditions. When he was a young man, one of his brothers was away at school and brought home his textbook. And the book was Emerson's essays, Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of the transcendentalists. And when Ernest read it, it was the first book of that nature that he had read, he said it was like drinking water. It refreshed his soul so much to find this spiritual wisdom in such a practical and applicable way that he could actually prove in his life. He then proceeded to study all of the different faith traditions and many of the spiritual masters throughout the ages. He studied the philosophers from Greek and Roman philosophers from the early days. He studied the Christian mystics. He studied Hinduism and Buddhism and actually took all of that and found what he called the golden threads of truth. Those principles that follow through every religion, regardless of what the dogma of the religion is. He found the spiritual principles into that and wrote about that. So Science of Mind is the name of our philosophy. Our organization is often referred to as religious science. It is part of what is now called the religion New Thought. It wasn't called that in Ernest days. In fact, it wasn't until 2015 that it became a world-recognized religion by the Parliament of World Religions in Salt Lake City. So this is what Ernest says about churches and other beliefs. This is from, I just started reading That Was Ernest, which is a biography of Ernest Holmes by Reginald Arnold. And so in there, this Reginald Arnold is quoting Ernest as saying this: "Of course we believe in all churches and in any form of worship. For above all, we certainly believe in a power for good in the universe. No one will ever have a complete understanding of truth. And we repudiate any superstition which says that all truth has been given. There's still much more to know. Yet actual truth, I missed a line. Each Orthodox religion has claimed to have the truth. And yet each actual truth may be so vast that no one of them could have more than just a mere decimal of truth." Can you imagine that the truth is so vast that what we already know right now is just a single fraction of what is possible for us to know about spiritual truth? The way that Ernest was able to take this information and bring it into a practical way launched a movement, a worldwide movement, and it has sustained since the early, we're almost at 100 years. It started in 26, so we're close to 100 years of religious science as a movement here. And it has, I know for many of us, it has changed our lives dramatically. Like I said, when I was in my early 40s, I didn't have any need for religion. When I came here, I often say that I found something here I didn't know I wanted. I didn't know I needed. I didn't know I was looking for. And it completely shifted my life around in a way that's amazing and wonderful. That's what religious science can do for us, this pathway of understanding that Ernest Holmes so brilliantly put together. This is from one of the opening chapters of the Science of Mind textbook. This is what he says about religious science. "A new light is coming into the world. We are on the borderland of a new experience. The veil between spirit and matter is very thin. The invisible passes into visibility through our faith in it. A new science, a new religion, and a new philosophy are rapidly being developed. This is in line with the evolution of the great presence, and nothing can hinder its progress. It is useless as well as foolish to make any attempts to cover this principle, or to hold it as vested right of any religion, sect, or order. The truth will out. The Spirit will make itself known. Happy are we if we see these things which, from the foundation of the human race, have been longed for by all aspiring souls. The truth will out. It doesn't really matter which path we use, which path we take to find truth. And truth can be individual for each one of us. What resonates as truth for me may not resonate as truth for someone else. And that's okay. It's when we begin to start to impose our truth on someone else that we fall into problems in our world. When we think that our way is the only way of being, the only way of living, the only way of doing. That's when trouble begins to happen in our world. But as long as we remember that there are many paths to God, and nothing is wrong about any one of them, then we are going to be in a much better condition, much better shape. So why do we want to know all of these different spiritual paths? Why do we need to know this? Why do we need to understand how other people think or practice or believe? Because it allows us to connect with people, and that's what we're here for. We are here to be in community. Human beings are not even biologically designed to be by themselves. We are a communal species. We are a species that works better when we are with others. But if we're with others and we think our way is the only way, then you can see where trouble like that happens, where things that become problematic in our world. Currently right now we're facing a couple of different wars in our world. We have the war in the Middle East that is essentially between people of the Islamic faith and people of the Jewish faith. I'm not so sure how much of it has to do with their faith as it has to do with their ideas of how things should be or who should have what. But it has become problematic. We have the war in the Ukraine right now. I'm not so sure it has much to do with religion, although at the Interfaith Forum we had a gentleman who was from the Greek Orthodox tradition speaking, and he talked about how the Russian Orthodox is being used to try to subvert the Greek Orthodox in the area. I wasn't really sure how I understood it because I didn't think it had anything to do with religion. I thought it was a land and power grab kind of situation. But he says, no, there is some use of the religion to impose the will of one power over another in that area. But when we understand that there are so many ways of experiencing our connection with Spirit, I think it gives us a place to be softer for other people's way of practicing, to understand other people's way of belief systems and ways of experiencing God. I think it's always an opportunity for us to use what we discern through our spiritual practices, through our conscious union with God, to find a way to experience it for other people. One of the people that did this really well, and it's one of the people that Ernest Holmes studied extensively in his later years, is a man named Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo taught the yogic traditions from India. He was a philosopher for many years, and he's written quite a few books there. He thinks that there is a triple path. The triple path and the divine realization is what he wrote. The triple path and the divine realization. And so the goal of it is God knowledge, God vision, to have the experience of God. And he says it's done through three things: through knowledge, through works, and through devotion. And I think this, Ernest would have really agreed with a lot of this, because the knowledge part, that intellectual part, that traditional part, that reading and finding out and practicing and seeing how it works in our lives, is all about building that knowledge base. And then when we learn this stuff, we take it out and put it into practice in the world. We do our good works in the world. We are in service to other people in the world. We are active in social justice and matters that are important in our lives. And then the third part is the devotional practice. That's the practice that we can do in community like this. We can do it individually in our own homes. We can do it when we're sitting out in nature. That's when we tap in and feel that divine connection. When you come into our sanctuary next week, as my grandmother would say, God willing and the creek don't rise, we are having a labyrinth here on the floor. That is a spiritual path. That is a way to practice spirituality. It is very contemplative. It can be very devotional. It can be a way to tap into an inner knowing that you had never experienced before. And so we have lots of different things that are going to be developed around that practice of the labyrinth. There are so many ways that we can practice faith and practice finding our way to God. And I think that most often we look for those ways when there's turmoil in our world, when we have problems that are happening in our world. This past week, maybe a little more than a week, we've had a couple of tragic things happen in our community here. I think it was about 7 or 8 days ago, we had 2 state troopers killed on the freeway. Very tragic, very much, it touched me deeply. I have friends and family that have worked in the law enforcement here in the county, in the Clark County for years, and the thought of it being one of them was what came to me instantly when I heard of the death of these troopers. And then just past Thursday, we had another shooting incident at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I'm a 2-time graduate of UNLV. And all I could think about was, what would I have done if I was there then? Where would I have been? And then we have members of our community that work there. We have members of our community that are students there. I'm rapidly checking on my phone, texting back and forth to see if everyone's okay. And so how do we deal with something like this? How do we actually take what I've talked about here and actually put it into practice? And there's so many ways that we can do that. We could do like the naturalist and go out and sit in nature and contemplate it until we get a clear head. We could be a caregiver and go see where I could be of service. I know on the October 1st shooting in 2017, thank you. I was trying to remember. I just became a minister then, so I was trying to remember it. We had many members of our community go to the hospitals. Where can I be of help? What can I do? Where can I know truth? We had people volunteering in lots of different ways to do that. We have the traditionalist who will walk into a sanctuary and sit down and pray. We have the contemplatives who find some way of being in meditation. And so as I say often here, I like to put this stuff into practice. To me, it's just lip service if I don't actually see how I can change things in my life. So Justin and I have come together with a little practice here to help us move through the challenges that our community has faced these last few days. So if you would with me, just take in a nice deep breath and close your eyes. And so just breathing in nice and deeply and breathing out slowly and fully. You just simply feel that presence of the divine moving on the air, moving into our bodies, moving out from our lungs, connecting with every cell, and then expelling itself from our bodies, merging with the air around us. So just do that a couple of times. Slow, deep breaths and slow exhale. And just simply know that each time you do that, you are bringing in a little more peace, a little more realization of the presence of the divine, a little more understanding that no matter what is happening, there is an answer. And the answer is carried on the wings of peace.
Is flowing like a river
And so continuing to breathe, feeling that peace flow through you. We send out love to all who are involved in this situation, to all the victims and their families, to all of the employees of UNLV, to all of the faculty, and to all of the students, knowing that the presence of the divine, that presence of love, is right at the heart of their being. And it has wrapped them in the wings of love and carried them forth through this time, through all of the turmoil and through all of the challenges that they experience right now, and anything that comes from this event. For simply there is only that presence of love.
Love is flowing like a river. Love that flows through me.
And as you move through the next few days and weeks, if anything comes up for you that isn't that presence of love, any worry or concern, any fear or anger, just acknowledge it. And remember that love and peace is the very nature of the universe. And that peace is always flowing through you.
Peace is flowing like a river. Peace flows through me. God is flowing like a river. God flows through me.
So let's take this into prayer. I invite our licensed practitioners to stand and surround us. As much as you can over here. I know there's a lot of stuff. So one of the great masterpieces of our lifetime is Ernest Holmes' spiritual mind treatment. It is a scientific, systematic form of prayer. It starts with the recognition of the divine, moves into unifying ourselves with it. If God is that, then I am too. And then there's the realization of truth, an expression of gratitude, and a simple release. And so right here and right now, I know that there is only one one power, one presence, one divine, creative, loving intelligence that has brought forth everything into existence. This one is the isness, the allness, the fullness of life. It has imbued itself in all creation, for all creation is made from it. In the beginning was this one, and through its own intelligence, its own impulse to create, the divine brought forth everything into expression. Everything we see before us today, everything that has ever been, and everything yet to be, is all a perfect manifestation of that one Creator. Because I know that there is only this one, I know that I am one with it. That every cell of my being is a creation of the divine. That spiritual essence is living itself through me right here and right now. In each one of the cells of my body, the air that I breathe, the pulse that runs through my veins. There is nothing but God. Because I know this is true for me, I know this is true for all of us. For each one of us is that perfect emanation of a loving Creator. And so in complete realization of the power and the presence of Spirit as each one of us, I speak my word of truth. I know that right here and right now, we have the opportunity to be a place of peace, a place of love, to express joy in all of its magnificent ways. That this community we are building together is that outward expression of God's love, of the perfection and the wholeness of the divine, right here and right now. I know that the very ground upon which we stand is holy ground because the presence is here. We brought it here. We enliven it while we are here. It is the truth of who we are. And so I know that this spiritual community that we have built together is a blessing to our entire community. In fact, our entire world. And I'm just so grateful to know this. I'm so grateful to feel it. I'm so grateful to see what's going to happen here. For I know it's magnificent. And I release this word into that law, into that creative mind that knows no limits, that always says yes. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is.